Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free review of Imaginary. It's the new horror movie in theaters from Blumhouse, who has done a lot of good horror movies. I would like to say more good than bad, and they are a very tactical movie studio because they see these movies more as investments than making art, which is fine. A movie has to make money. That is the goal. As much as I want to go see something that people have thought a lot about the creative process and made something that is truly going to be scary to people, especially somebody like me who I've been watching horror movies since I was a kid. It is really hard to scare me now. And I don't say that as I'm so tough, nothing scares me. It just takes a lot of imagination and a lot of creating tension now for me to really be invested in a movie. And I'm a little bit tired of the same formula when it comes to horror movies, a genre that I just love. My favorite thing to do is to go watch a horror movie alone because Kelsey won't do them whatsoever. She gets freaked out. And I'm okay with that. We don't have to like every genre of movie together. So it's the one thing that I go see in theaters that I just enjoy the process of going by myself. Sometimes I'll take a can of coffee with me into the theater and just sit there, crack it, and enjoy the movie. Maybe I'm writing off of that anxiety too of the coffee that kind of spikes my nervous system and makes me anxious for what's going to happen. And I love that process. Going to see a horror movie in theaters, a lot of what I feed off of is the audience. That is a great thing about seeing comedies and horror movies in theaters because it could be a C-minus movie, but if it creates that fun environment, it could take it up to a B, maybe even a B plus, because I think these movies are best experienced in theaters with other people, making the commentary, saying the curse words, jumping out of their seat, getting freaked out, saying, "Don't go down there." That is part of the horror movie experience that I enjoy. But Imaginary robbed me of that experience because it was so dull and lacked so much imagination. So what this movie is about, you have this woman who you get her story at the beginning of the film through flashback, which I hate, just get right into the action. But whenever you start out so weak, I just feel like I'm not going to be in for a good time. And that is what this movie did. It tried to kick it off with a big, I won't even say action sequence, but just that big dominating opening that a good horror movie should have. It failed completely. Honestly, I knew within those first few minutes that this was not going to be an enjoyable time for me. And then we go to her life now. She has met someone new in her life. She has 2 stepdaughters, and they go back to live in her childhood home where some questionable things may or may not have happened. And then you're kind of learning a little bit about her story, but what it centers around is the youngest stepdaughter starts having this imaginary friend in the form of a teddy bear. And things start getting weird. You see the teddy bear move, she's talking to it, and everybody's just kind of happy because she has an imaginary friend. Her daughter has gone through some traumatic things. There is nothing more generic you can do in a horror movie than somebody moving back into a creepy home. I couldn't believe that what they decided to do was something we've seen 100 times. Somebody moving back into their childhood home and then weird things start happening. Who would have guessed that? And I am somebody that anytime it's a story involving a kid talking to a dead person or something that other people can't see, just that creepy kid factor is enough for me to enjoy it. And that's really what was showcased in the trailer. I thought it was going to be a little bit more paranormal, maybe is why it didn't meet up to my expectations, therefore having a lot of jump scares, which can feel a little bit cheap at times, but at least I would have felt something in this story. It lacked any kind of emotion, but everything felt so forced. And this was the only movie I've seen in theaters where I could literally feel the production. I could, in my head, see these people on set, and it was so apparent to me that they were acting. And every character was just riddled with cliches. You had the classic creepy old neighbor who is looming over the family, and they have the most generic interactions that you could have in a horror movie. It would mean more to me if all of the horror elements and the monster had a little bit more appeal. But even the monster wasn't monstering in Imaginary. One of my favorite things that a director can do is build the tension by not showing you the monster, which is almost more creepy because the whole time you're wondering, what is this character going to look like? When is it going to fully reveal itself? And you could argue that this movie did do that. It didn't show the monster primarily throughout the film. The key difference here is at some point you have to show the monster in its full glory. And the moments that this film did show the monster, it was dark and you couldn't really make out what it exactly looked like. So maybe that was supposed to be scarier in itself, but to me, it just felt like they were cutting corners on production. Which leads me to the Blumhouse approach. And I've heard Jason Blum talk about in interviews where he really sees these movies as investments. That's why he got into the horror business, because you can make a movie for a really low budget. This movie only cost $10 to $12 million to make, and all the movie has to do is make back twice its production cost to be profitable. Right now, this movie is sitting at about a $15 to $16 million at the time of recording this. So, given its theatrical run, it's going to make back its money, therefore be a solid investment for Blumhouse. I think they put out these type of movies just to make that little amount of change. So that is their model. They put out a $10 million movie hoping to make $20 million. But also, you could really catch on and have a movie that just crushes at the box office and makes even more than that. What they did last year with Megan, which had roughly the same budget as Imaginary with $10 to $12 million, and that movie went on to make $180 million worldwide, crushing. And that is like winning the lottery for Blumhouse. So to me, it's almost like they are fishing with these type of movies. Let's throw out a $10 million budget and see what we can do. Worst case scenario, we lose a little bit of money. It's the low risk, high reward. Who wouldn't do this and make movies like this that feel like they were just made in a big warehouse with no life whatsoever, that you could slap a Lifetime label at the bottom of this and throw it on TV? That is what this movie felt like to me. I feel like it was a little bit of a slap in the face to people who are a fan of horror movies, especially those that come from Blumhouse, who has the tendency to make movies that audiences love, creating that fun, inviting, warm feeling. This movie felt like it was just more movie business and less for the fans. And what really kind of makes me mad is the fact that this movie had so much wasted potential. It taps into the world of imaginary friends and somebody using their creativity to overcome something in their life. That could have been so much more fun on the screen. You think all the fun visuals that they could have done. But again, going back to that $10 to $12 million budget, there really wasn't room for it. In these movies, you have actors that you're usually pretty unfamiliar with, which I think is fine because it puts the emphasis, or should put the emphasis, on the story instead of who is playing it. They're not selling it with the names attached to it. It is just being sold by the scary nature of the film. And this was a movie that the trailer hooked me in. So if you ever think that the trailer is just a waste of time, that studios should stop focusing so much on this, use this as an example, because in no way would this movie have made any money if it wasn't for that trailer being shown that hooked me in, probably hooked a lot of other people in. Had a pretty decent poster as far as creating the creepy image of the teddy bear. But outside of that, there was no fun to be had in Imaginary. It lacked imagination. I give it 1.5 out of 5 teddy bears.